Yeah.
Okay. How are you emotionally right now, and where are you physically right now? Okay.
Physically, Texas.
Emotionally, I'll get there. All right, ready?
All right.
One, two, three. Welcome, everybody, ladies and gentlemen. I am Rita Boom, and I am here tonight with my co-host. What's your name tonight?
Casey.
Casey. Casey. All right, Casey. What do we have going on tonight?
Oh my God. We're so lucky. We have Mark from another country.
Across the pond. I love
Across the
saying that.
pond.
Across the pond.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And he's going to come in and what? Tell us the story?
Well, I hope so.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, Mark. Uh, welcome to the Whatever It Takes podcast. Uh, we're great to have you here. We love to hear your story. We see you in meetings all the time, and we find you very inspirational. And it was an honor for us to even have you consider to come on to our podcast. So thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Yeah, my name is Mark, and people might be able to tell from the accent I'm a Scottish person,
Dude, she's
and I am in Scotland. Um,
See, they think my
yeah,
accent cool. His accent's
in
cool.
Scotland.
See,
I know. I love your
your accent's cooler than my accent.
It's way cooler than
But anyway, go on. I'm sorry.
where do I start? I start probably around the age of 5.
Oh.
Um, and I won't get into the entirety of that story, but it did involve Sean Connery being James Bond um, on a TV, which for the first time on Christmas Day I was viewing in colour. But anyway, that's a
Oh.
ran to the whole story. But because of that, I, I started at the age of 5, um, quite compulsively. Compulsion has been a huge part of my life, and it really did start off with tall stories. And it was all Sean Connery's fault. Tall stories, tall stories from the age of 5, uh, at school, blowing myself up to be somebody um, larger than life, somebody I wasn't. Um, and I think part of that was just trying to acquire friends and seem interesting.
Okay,
I get that.
I get that.
I was a compulsive liar at the age of 5. I was a compulsive thief by the age of 6.
Ooh.
Um, that started small, but over decades was to get really large. Um, and again, it was all the same kind of thing, trying to impress people. Um, Buying sweets for kids at school just to, there was something obviously wrong with my character that couldn't just be me.
Right.
Um, led around the age of 7, a compulsive gambler. So I've pretty much been gambling for the majority of my life, either actually gambling or just gambling in other ways. I'll come back to that.
Yeah.
But the truth of it is that for 40 odd years of my life, it wasn't me. I pretended to be some, whether that was at school, high school, university, and even in my adult life at work. I ended up working in corporate finance, in a world where, you know, uh, how you're viewed by others is very important. So I projected this persona. Um,
Mhm.
I could go through, it doesn't matter which age I was, my day was a movie,
Mhm.
and I played many different characters. I wore many different masks.
Mhm.
I told many tall tales. I tell anybody whatever I thought they wanted to hear.
Mhm.
Uh, there was something in my character. Now, that was to do me some harm, but the thing that did me most harm was the gambling. I was the school bookie, and I would always rig it. As my earliest memories are of, allowing people to part with their money on a bet with me. Um, I would run a sweepstake annually on football. at the start of the school year, I'd get all the kids to pick a team out of a hat, and that was their team, and they'd all give me £1. Okay, and the winner at the end, if their team won the league, they would get £10.
Wow.
The thing is, there were 20 teams in the league, so I was going to always make the £10 myself, and I didn't put the teams in the hat in the first place. I this was the devious mind of something like a 12-year-old.
Gambler.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it was always a constant. I went through school. I was pretty clever. I wasn't academically brilliant because I was lazy. But for some reason, and it's not a boast, I was naturally clever. So I actually left school with some pretty good grades, having not done very much work, having not for very much. You know, I would bunk off as any opportunity to go and play pool or to go in town or whatever. You know, I was a kid. I was fairly likable, but I never had any friends. Someone later in life described me as a sociable loner once they got to know my story, and that handle is pretty good for me.
A
sociable loner.
A sociable loner.
Yeah.
I could walk into a bar on my own, and within 5 minutes be best friends with a complete stranger.
Same way.
And 2 hours later, we'd kind of walk out of that bar together, we'd part company, and 5 minutes later, I never knew the guy.
Yeah.
You know, I could make acquaintances that quick and drop them that quick, and there was never any friendship. And I never told anybody about me. Nobody got to know Mark.
Wow.
Except for some reason, bartenders, taxi drivers, and barbers. Now I say, but I used to have hair.
That's why we get along so well. I'm a bartender. Yeah.
There you are.
Alter ego.
And you might know then. People will tell bartenders their entire life histories, crimes they've committed, things they've done, bad things that they're worried about, because it's a safe, because the chances are you're never going to see that person again.
Right.
And it was almost like a confessional, I didn't have a priest to confess to, so I would confess all my sins. These were the only people I was ever honest with. I wasn't honest with my family, my employers, I ended up in real trouble around the age of 21. And remember, I've been gambling since I was 8. At that time, his girlfriend at high school. A relationship that lasted all of about a year. I think I was about 16, 17. But my first love was gambling. At any opportunity, I would gamble, and I would gamble underage. Nobody really cared. This was the 80s. Nobody really checked, And over here in the UK, we have things called betting shops. Basically legalized bookmakers. They're on every street. They're next to every pub, quite strategically. And you can go in there and you can bet on anything. They've got a wall of TVs. You can bet on any horse race, dog race, football match, anything. And it even got to the point where they didn't have enough things to bet on, so they started cartoon racing, and people cartoons. It didn't matter what I was betting on. I was just the buzz of winning, or even the low of losing.
Quick question: you have to be 21 to gamble in Scotland, yeah?
No, you have to be 18.
18.
18. Okay.
From the age of 16 or anywhere that would. I was gambling on machines all through my teens, probably from the age of 12, I was gambling on machines because I could always find a machine at somewhere in the back door, and I would kind of sneak in and play it because nobody, even if they saw a kid playing a machine, nobody bothered.
Wow.
And nothing in here, nothing in they say is a dig at
Right.
the industry or anything like that. I don't gambling industry for anything about my addiction. I was going to gamble on anything, whether related or not. You know, I was a compulsive, and I believe that it was something that was inherently within me, and is still, and will always be
Always there.
inherently within me. It was to get me into a bit of trouble because the more lies I told and the more money I borrowed and stole, and I got into a bit of trouble with a bunch of people who were back, and I got kicked out of university at the age of 19, and I was running around the country, literally running away from some people who nobody really running away from.
Okay.
So I didn't really stay in many places for too long. I kind of stayed around for a while and I moved on. I was to end up on a rock in the middle of the Irish place called the Isle of Man. And it's 70,000 who've got nowhere left to run. That's what it's like in the UK. It's like running away from any end up in this rock in the middle of the Irish Sea. And that was to be one of the worst things that could have happened because the first place I'd come across that had a casino. And I got work there in one of these betting shops.
Okay.
Which was it was hilarious. I would actually go into work in this betting shop, and I get paid at the end of the day. But actually, what usually happened was I'd be paying them because I was placing bets all the time I was in the shop. I got a better job in an office, which gave me a kind of weekly. But that's when I discovered the casino. I discovered blackjack, which was to be my favorite poison, if you like, because I thought I was clever. I thought I was clever. My system was going to work. I read all the books.
Yeah.
So there I would be. I'd get paid. I remember getting paid once a month, and a number of times higher wages for the month were lost on that first night. And then again, I beg, steal, borrow, commit criminality just to get by, pay the rent, the next month. I was there for years, and then all my issues of owing people money and them not being very happy with me kind of came to a head. And my little eight mother had to come and get her boy. She came all the way from Scotland to this rock in the middle of the Irish Sea and basically tugged me by the ear back home. And there's a couple of hilarious stories in there that some of these people who were after me actually came up against my mother. That didn't go well. That didn't go well for them. So I was 21. I was back in Scotland. I was living with my parents. I had no job. I had no qualifications, no prospects, no money, lots of debt. You they took care of the debt, but I was kind of now living by their rules. And back then, this was 1990. Internet, there was no mobile phones or anything like that. So the internet back then was a thing called the Yellow Pages, and my mother looked up gambling. Is there anything that can be done for gambling? and came across a small ad for Gamblers Anonymous, a 12-step fellowship. We knew nothing. We knew nothing about this, but she was desperate that her son was going to try and solve his problem. We phoned up and we found out there was a meeting that night. I went along to this meeting, and what I learned there was life-saving for me. First of all, I walked into a room and I found there was lots of people just like me.
Mm-hmm.
When I say just like me, I was there in kind of scruffy jeans and holes in my shoes, and not looking too great. And these people all seem to be, most of them were well dressed, driving nice cars, and so when I say just like me, not quite, but we all had the same problem. They were all gamblers, and when I listened to some of their stories, I knew that I was amongst my own people. They weren't telling me you're stupid. They weren't telling me just stop being an idiot. They were telling me something that was really important for me to hear. They were telling me I was ill.
Yeah.
They were saying to me, Mark, you suffer from an illness that's called compulsive gambling.
Wow.
When you start gambling, you can't stop. And I said, yeah, that's pretty much exactly it. They said it's not because you're stupid. And some people call it an addiction. And that's okay. It's just a word, but it's the same outcome.
Yeah.
If I start gambling, I will not stop until I physically cannot. I don't have the means. And I will take that to the extreme. Personally, if I don't have the means, I will do everything in my power to get the means,
Yeah.
which could involve lying, stealing, cheating, borrowing, everything, financially wise. Anyway, I took to this GA thing. There was one meeting a week in the city I was in. No, actually, there was two, but I, for work purposes and whatever, I managed to get to one meeting a week. 2 hours of my week was spent going to this thing. I went for the best part of 10 years, every single week. I loved it because these were people who understood me. Here was a thing that explained compulsive gambling to me. Here was they all talked about this program, which I thought I was on.
Oh.
Not really. But I didn't gamble. And first of all, I went back to college, and I got my qualification. I got a qualification in IT. Then I found a girlfriend. Then we got engaged. And then we got married. This was once I'd left college and got a job. And then I got a better job. And we bought a house. And it was like everything that was, normal people would do,
Yeah.
I was now managing to achieve for the first time in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And after about 8 years of that, well, actually, in year 8, we had our first child, my son, and by now I was self-employed. I'd started a company, and things were going extremely well because I was working in IT. And for anyone who's old enough to remember the year 2000, that was a license to print your own money if you worked in IT. And I got on that bandwagon. Life got very, very, very busy. Okay. And everything was going well. I'm now married with a kid in our own house, with my own company. I'm driving a nice car. I mean, it was like the American
Away from
dream,
the
but
guy that your mom picked up in the middle of Ireland somewhere.
exactly. It was like, I was living the American dream just in Scotland. I mean, everybody would look at me and say, look how well that guy's doing. And I was.
Wow.
Um,
Were you
but you see,
gambling?
Mark,
You weren't gambling though, right?
no, I hadn't gambled a day since
Okay.
1990 when I walked into GA. And by now it's about halfway through 19, maybe 1999. I can't remember exactly.
Okay,
I remember not being able to get to a meeting one week because I was too busy.
okay.
Uh-oh.
And then I didn't get to the meeting the other week because I was too busy. And then my head started coming in and
I
saying,
got goosebumps.
I
I
know.
know that. I know what
was,
you're talking about.
it was Mark, you've done so well. Look at how much you've achieved, how
Oh.
much I've achieved. Uh, Look at all the things you have. You have to keep focused here. You got to keep running the business. You got to get these projects done. You
Mhm.
know, you've got to do everything that's expected of you.
Right.
Um, and you don't need GA
Oh.
because you've heard it all. You've heard it all. You've heard every story. You've heard enough stories now that, I think basically I'd convinced myself that I was cured.
Uh,
I'd forgotten what I'd been told on the first meeting, that I have an illness called compulsive gambling. But it can never be arrested. Sorry, never be cured, but it can only be arrested a day at a time.
mhm.
That's what I'd been told, and I believed that. But by this point, my ego had just got to the point of, haven't I done well? Haven't I so successful? I don't need GA. I've learned everything I need now. I'll never gamble again. All of this in my head. And I didn't gamble. I didn't go back to GA for quite a long time. Um, in fact, I think I dropped in once, and they hadn't seen me in such a while that somebody suggested I must have been gambling. And that was enough for me to just say, well, forget it. If I'm
Oh.
going to get accused of things like that, I'm not coming back at all. And I
Right.
didn't. I didn't come back. I went off and I continued to do all those things with business and work and people. That was the case for that was the case until 2006.
Ooh.
2006. And by now, I am very successful business wise.
Mhm.
Um, I, my wife has the ability, I've got a huge income. We have all the trimmings of life.
Wow.
And I was bored one night. I was working through in Glasgow and I was bored one night. I had a meeting. It was crazy. I had a meeting at midnight that night. It was just one of these corporate project things. And I was bored and I was looking around for something to do and I saw this casino sign. And some nostalgic thing tugged at my head and said, Mark, that could be fun for the night. Why don't you go in there and, you know, you could have a little bet on the blackjack. This has been 16 years since I've gambled.
Wow.
Um, it took 20 seconds to have the thought. It took all of 20 minutes to walk across the street, register myself with this casino, be given a guided tour by this guy who was so pleased to see a guy in a suit come into his casino, to 20 minutes between the thought and sitting at a blackjack table, handing over cash and getting chips. And I'm pretty sure I lost money that night, but it didn't matter. I felt invincible. I had everything, the wherewithal in life that, I
Mhm.
was invincible. And I went to my meeting and I kind of patted myself on the back. Well, that was great, Mark. Well done. Not with the intention of going back the next day, but of course I did. And the next, and maybe the week after, and the week after that.
Ooh.
This was the start of a relapse. I call it a 7-year bet.
Oh my
Mm.
God.
In that 7 years, I lost everything material that I'd ever built up.
Mhm.
Um, I lost all my money. I lost everyone else's money. I defrauded the tax authorities because I wasn't paying them their money. The criminality and fraud and everything came. Everything that I'd not been doing. Um, it all happened. It's a 7-year fog. It's a 7-year, it's just chaotic. Every day was Groundhog Day. Every day was that make-believe movie.
Yeah.
And I was hanging on by my fingertips until at a point in 2013, it all came crashing down because I had basically lost everything to the point that there was no way out. Well, there was two ways out. There was there was the potential for me to take my own life, and I weighed that quite heavily. But there was also the option of going home and confessing to my wife exactly who she was married to and what he'd been up to. Because her life had been going downhill, and I'd always been able to lie, say, oh, times is hard, I've lost this contract, so and so's after this amount of money. So we had already been living on a breadline for some time. The mortgage, oh, this was the mortgage. We didn't have a mortgage. But I, in those 7 years, had negotiated a mortgage on the house that we had that was bought and paid for.
Oh, wow.
I mean, that was just one of the things. I confessed. I remember waking her up after midnight, and she said two things to me. Now, remember, in terms of her entire married life, she'd never known me to gamble, and all of this has happened in secret. And in a way, it was kind of a relief for her because she thought I was having an affair.
Okay.
I mean, I had been too, because I tell you, once I start acting out gambling, everything else comes along with it. I was a fairly despicable person, to be honest. And she said, "You're going to go back to GA," was the first thing, and you're going to tell our kids who their dad is tomorrow. The first one I didn't mind. The second one, that was horrific. I broke my kids' heart. They were, at the time, I think they would have been 11 and 14.
Okay.
My little girl especially, her entire picture of her father changed immediately. And that was a relationship that was going to take the best part of 10 years to rebuild.
Oh, God.
Anyway, I came back to GA. A little bit of trepidation, thinking they're gonna wipe me out. Because they're going to call me everything under the sun. They're going to have such. This guy who should have known better had been nearly 10 years in this program, and I had all these thoughts. Came back to GA, and all I got was welcome back. Glad to have you back. You're in the right place.
Yes.
I was back in a room full of people who understood.
Mm-hmm.
I was back in a room full of people, many of whom had been exactly where I was.
Yeah.
And that's what I needed. And for the first time in my life, I started to recognize that there was a program. This 12-step thing actually had 12 steps in it. And I was supposed to be working them. And I was supposed to be working them in order. Now, it still took a bit of time in GA before I got round to that. But eventually it did, and it was to stand me in great stead. Because the two things the steps did for me. One, for someone who had hidden away from himself all his life, I actually got the opportunity to learn who Mark was. Because one of the steps focuses very highly on finding out about me.
Right.
And that was a revelation. And the other thing that they promise, the only thing they really promise, was to give me a way of coping with life a day at a time. And that was essential for me because my life's all the pain and the consequences that had built up from my gambling were still hanging around. Nobody was there. My parents weren't there to bail me out anymore.
Yeah.
So life became hard. I kept working, trying to do the right things, pay off the people, get rid of my debts, but everything kind of caught up with me. And eventually, the bank wanted its house back, mortgage. So we all got evicted, roughly just over 5 years ago. We all got evicted. We all became homeless, 4 of us.
Wow.
And
Riches to rags.
that's actually riches to rags. Unbelievably, yes. I went from a 6-figure income to a 4-figure income because I lost my. I worked in corporate finance. My credit rating was through the floor. I couldn't get everything was falling about. I remember waiting for a call from, the girl at the local authority telling us which homeless hospital we were to get now.
Wow.
That's when it all fell apart. That remembering that I needed to go for a pee, a toilet. That is quite eye-opening in terms of, wow, this is where it's got to, Mark. And that's the point I realized that nothing was in my control anymore. Literally nothing was in my control. I got this phone call from this young girl at the council that says, Mark, you and your family are going to turn up at this place at 5 o'clock tonight, bring this, this, and this. That's where you're going to be staying. And we were in that homeless hostel, and it was a fairly horrendous place. We were in there for 6 weeks. The scariest 6 weeks of my wife's life.
Wow.
She hardly ever left the room. And,
Wow.
I was kind of oblivious to all this. This is what I've learned later. So I harmed people through my gambling, through my addiction, through my choices. What I learned was that I wasn't in control, and I actually had to reach out to other people. For the first time in my life, I had to reach out to other people that could help. I reached out once to one person, and a dozen people came running.
Oh, wow.
That was when I started to learn about words that knew nothing to me, words that recovery, humility, not my humility, the humility of complete strangers giving me help just because they could. They weren't obliged to. I was getting all these examples of what's actually important in life. It's not money. It's not a fast car. It's not nice clothes. It's not, people respecting me in my kind of idea of the word respect. It was people being there for each other and looking out for each other and helping complete strangers. That's one of the lessons that really kind of made me take the program seriously and work it more. Back in GA 13 and a bit, no, sorry, 11 and a bit years. 2013 was when I came back, 11 and a bit years. My life has changed completely. I haven't gambled in all of that time. I've been involved with a worldwide community of compulsive gamblers, just like me, because compulsive gambling doesn't know any borders. We're all the same. I make the joke that there's a guy in Australia that I could phone up because he understands my head better than the guy that lives next door to me.
True. Yeah.
And I do that. I get calls in the middle of the night from people in Washington State and stuff like that.
Wow.
Because that's what this is. It's a fellowship of people who understand each other, and only we understand each other.
Right.
And it works. If I want to get any message over in what I'm saying here, it works. And I haven't found any other way of, any other solution, because left to my own devices, my own head, it all goes downhill very, very quickly. So yes, I'm a man now with no active secrets, and I had many. But, I came to that conclusion a few months back that I have no active secrets. I'm not trying to hide anything, lie about anything. And the burden of I don't have that burden every morning when I wake up. I try to remember the lie I told somebody yesterday, the money that I owe somebody, the story that I need to invent to get more. All of that is gone. Don't
Wow.
have much. Still living in this apartment that the council found for us. Pay the rent on time every month. Um, but I'm happier. I'm happier now. It might be rags, but I'm happier now than I was ever in a world where I was just pretending to be someone I wasn't.
Uh-huh.
And I don't have that gambling thing hanging over me, but it's always there. It's a day at a time. I know that tomorrow I could gamble, so I've got to be wary about that. But yeah, this program, fellowship, it keeps me on the straight and narrow. So that's a kind of whistle stop tour of 45 years or more,
Wow.
How are
50
you
years.
and your wife today?
Yeah.
Well, this is the interesting thing. You see, my wife now suffers from many, many illnesses. So I had to kind of give up any kind of outside work, and I'm her primary carer.
Really?
I have an interesting life in that I look after her during the day, and then I work during the night. I
Uh-huh.
sleep in 2 shifts, 4 hours at a time during the day, split shift sleeping.
Okay.
But we make it work, And for a guy that never wanted to be at home and was always absent, running about doing his own thing, I couldn't be happier being confined to 4 walls and just looking after her.
Yeah.
And I have this incredible connection thanks to Zoom and with the rest of the world, which
Yeah.
was never there before. My kids are happy,
Good.
and we've rebuilt the relationships, and I now get to be the dad I never was.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
Because I told this the other night, most dads, if they bought their kids a PlayStation for Christmas, right, would sit and play with the PlayStation with their kids.
Yeah.
No,
But you
I
can.
thought it was enough just to supply them with a PlayStation, and then when I'd run out of money 8 months later, I'd steal the PlayStation, stick it on eBay, get the money, and gamble it.
Yeah.
That's not what a dad should do.
No.
Right.
And that was just one of many examples of despicable dad. Their dad's not despicable now. Their dad listens to them, offers his sagely advice, and gets told how stupid he is. We have a great relationship. And
So, Mark, you said that all of this time, you didn't know the real Mark. Who is the real Mark?
I keep finding out more about that guy every day. And you know what? I find out more about me from others than I can ever, because people were afraid to tell me who I was. They all had judgments on me. They all had opinions on me. Most of them weren't very good,
Mhm.
but and most wouldn't ever tell me. Now people are quite happy to say, Mark, you used to be such a whatever.
Okay.
But now you're not. And so I find out from others who I was, because honestly, it was such a fog that I don't even remember.
Wow.
Um, I have done so many things in my life that I don't even remember most of them. But
Wow.
there's always someone that I'll bump into that'll
And
tell me,
remind
that is there to tell me, do you know that in 2010 you did this? I said, really? I'm really sorry. I don't
Yeah, right.
remember.
Yeah, right.
Really
Yeah.
I'm really sorry.
So I don't know. I like to think I'm very sure I'm a better person. What better means, I don't know. I like to think that
You like who you are. You're comfortable with who you are.
I'm becoming more comfortable. I haven't stolen anything. I haven't lied to anyone. I haven't kept any secrets. I
Uh,
haven't tried to embezzle anybody, rob anybody. So that's going to be moving in the right direction. And I hope that what I do these days helps people. Um, but for all that, I'm just trying to live more calmly and peacefully, and at ease with myself than ever before. And so yeah,
That's cool.
yeah.
I know that when you do come on to the Zoom meetings, I always, if I hear that you're going to share, I'm listening.
Yeah, me too.
Because,
Me too.
there's certain people that you do listen to and everything. You're
You
one
get a
that I,
message from, right?
that I
Definitely.
always know I'm going to learn something
Yeah,
for sure.
I agree. I definitely agree.
So I think, that's good. That's really good.
That's
I'm glad.
That's nice to hear. That's nice
Yeah.
to hear. Well, I'll tell you what I have discovered, having done the steps several times. What I think I know now, come back in 5 years, I might have changed my mind.
Yeah.
That's the beauty. That's the beauty of
Yeah.
this. Every day I discover I know less,
Wow.
but I'm learning all the time. There's
And
there's always so much
promise
more
of
to
the
learn.
program? Did the promises of the program come true for you?
Yeah. Especially the one that says we will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us.
Oh God,
Because
really?
I didn't remain baffled. I just ran away. I
Yeah.
just invented my own solution in my head and I followed that. I didn't intuitively handle a damn thing. I ran.
Mhm.
And that's what the main promise is for me, that if I stay in this program, if I live one day at a time, if I tackle things head on, I have the courage, as the Serenity Prayer says, if I have the courage to change the things I can and the wisdom to know the difference between the things I can change and the things I can't, I'll be okay. So yes, I think the promises do
Mhm.
come true.
Yeah.
I think so too. I mean, I'm only been in a little over 2 years, and I'm
There's no only. Come on.
Okay. Well, I know that it's a lifetime for me, so that's why I always say that, because it's a lifetime. It's a lifestyle, and I'm up to step 9, taking them slow. But I have a great sponsor. Do you still have a sponsor?
I never had a sponsor.
Never had a
You've
sponsor.
never
Fun
had
fact.
her.
Fun fact. Mark never had a sponsor. Mark had some of the best mentors around him. I was greedy. I didn't have one sponsor. I had 4 or 5.
Wow.
Yeah.
And many of those people had gone through the steps.
Uh,
And more importantly, I went to a lot of step meetings, step groups,
yes.
where
Okay.
we
I was
would
gonna say,
only talk about
how'd
the
you know how
steps.
to work the steps? Right. Yeah.
So it was like I didn't have a sponsor. I had a family,
Oh,
of step
Yeah.
people. And it doesn't really matter, how you get through the steps or
Right.
how you manage it. Everybody's journey is different. But yes, I never had a sponsor, and nor have I sponsored anyone,
what?
because I again, it's the same thing for me. I wouldn't kind of want to devote, and I'm not saying sponsorship's a bad thing at all,
Yeah.
but I kind of like to help many people in whatever way I can, without kind of focusing my attention on one or two or whatever. So, and that's probably how life circumstances allow me to be as well.
Well,
So,
I've met a
uh,
few men in the program that don't sponsor, that kind of like you. They'll do, I just give them a call and they're a speaker, or just this or that, or they talk to me or somebody. So many men like that. And I'm so thankful for it, because, I truly believe in standing on the shoulders of giants. And if I could pick your brain, I'm sure going to.
And we've been.
I'm not a giant. Can I just say that another thing I found out on week 1 in 1990,
Yeah.
and a guy who for 20 years at that time, he said to me, um, a wise man learns from the mistakes of others, and a learns from his own. So there's nothing wise about it. It's just experience that I don't want
Say
others
that
to have.
again.
Yeah, can you repeat that one more
A
time?
wise man
A
learns.
wise man learns from the mistakes of others.
Okay.
A fool doesn't learn from his own.
Oh, well,
Ah.
shit. We're all
And
full.
I didn't. And I didn't learn from my
I
own.
didn't.
I had to go through. There's people that have to go through the shit to be able to
Yeah.
Right.
be passed
Had to
on
learn the
wisdom.
hard way. Right.
Those are the
The
people I
people,
want to
the
talk.
wise people are the people that say, "Oh, I've heard that guy's story. I'm not going to do that. And then they
Yeah.
don't do it. They're the wise ones. So,
True.
Yeah. But you know what we've been doing a lot of stories and like hearing a lot of people's stories during recording these podcasts, and
Yeah.
they all a lot of them, I mean, backing up on this, if they've been a gambler and then they get clean, the life becomes amazing. It comes back. I mean, everything we promise in these programs happens. It's
Yeah, I
just
think so.
we have to stay in control of when life's good. We have to remember how bad it used to be.
there's one of the promises. I think it's the other one. We will come to know the word serenity.
Yeah.
And I never knew what serenity was. I
I
was always chasing.
I
I
didn't
was
know what
always
to do with
pursuing
you.
happiness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then someone pointed out to me, Mark, the pursuit of happiness is not happiness. Can't be by definition. It just isn't.
That's true.
You're never going to achieve it unless you just let life happen and you handle life. Then you've got a chance. Then you've got a chance of finding peace.
Yeah.
And yeah,
So
it's
do you have an everyday ritual or that you do?
yeah. Step one, step 10.
Step one? Okay.
I gotta remind, because I am both vulnerable and capable, so I have to remind myself every day I am a compulsive gambler, and
Uh-huh.
I always will be. And that if I make a choice to bet today, I'm not gambling with money. For me,
Gambling
it's
with your life.
freedom, sanity, and life. That's what I gamble if I choose to.
Okay.
And it could be the most trivial thing, even just buying a scratch card or something.
Mhm.
I can't do it because I know that one will lead to another, will lead to another
Yeah.
immediately.
Right.
So I have to remind myself because I've got a short-term memory. And if I don't remind myself every day, come next Wednesday, I'll have forgotten.
Forget it.
So that has to happen. And then step 10, which is the end of the day,
End of the day.
Mark, did you do anything today that you maybe should go and make amends for? Did you act out in some way? Did your pride get the better of you? Have you judged someone when you shouldn't have judged them? That one keeps me. Uh, it, yeah, that one keeps me straight and
Yeah.
doesn't let that
Yeah.
ego flare up and take over again. Because it is quite humbling to then the next day go to my daughter or something and say, I shouldn't have said what I said yesterday. Your taste in music is perfectly fine, love. How, how dare how dare I judge your choices? But it does. It keeps it. I think we're 8 billion people just trying to survive each day on this kind of revolving globe, and
Yeah.
we're just trying to get through it. And
We are.
we,
The sad part is not many people seek help.
No.
And the people that do try to get help, that's a very low stat that they actually stay in the program and get the help. It makes me sick. That's why we want to do this podcast. I don't know what it'll do. It's just two of us, but we have a whole lot of people that are supporting us and everything. We want to get this out. I hate the stigma of the gambler, how we're just the worst people alive.
So I feel bad for the ones that right now, the young adults in the
The
world
sick and the suffering.
are the ones that are going to be the epidemic
they
of
are.
this disease.
Uh-huh.
And to know that they're going to be looked at the way that we're looked at is
Yeah.
frightening, because I don't think they're as strong as our generations.
We're seeing a whole lot more young people come in. Like
Yeah.
we saw a guy the other night, 18 years
18
old,
years old.
calling in, and it had to get bad before you call in. And
I have a girl who's coming on next. She places bets for her 16-year-old nephew.
Yeah.
16 years old.
They spend their tuition or whatever,
and it's funny because you suggested the world is different, and it is. The world is just so much more complex,
Yeah.
and these kids are just so much smarter.
Yeah.
And they're so much emotionally in tune. They're so much emotionally in tune. They think about things far more deeply than I ever did.
Right.
And yeah, so it comes with a whole burden of other things. And yeah, I think yes, they are more emotionally at risk from
They're already addicted to it because
They're on their phone.
they're this now
all they do.
24/7.
Yeah, they have
I
been
couldn't,
their
I couldn't,
babies.
I
Well,
couldn't bet on a Sunday because there was no horse racing.
I know.
That's the crazy thing. That's 30 years difference,
Yeah.
And I used to hate Good Friday because there was no horse racing on Good Friday either. And it's just
Damn
now,
that.
now it's 24/7 on your phone, whatever you want, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they're more clever, like you say. They can get it. You know how we had to jump from A to B to whatever to get the cash, the money to go on. And I did a lot of my gambling online too, but it's just, I think it's more, at first, when I first came in, it was all men, and that wasn't that long ago. Then I started seeing more women, and now I'm noticing it's more young adults. That just kills me.
Funny you say stigma because that stigma has always been there.
I know. Yeah.
Way back when I was gambling in the 80s, that stigma was there.
Yeah.
And I think the other big thing about this is that gambling is not seen in the same way as other addictions.
No, not.
It's not seen as the same way as.
Not at all.
And there's the same stigma. If you're an alcoholic or a drug user, there is the same stigma. No one. They are fairly negative things.
Yeah.
But there's only so much drink you can consume.
Right.
Before your body, won't take anymore. There's only so much drugs you can ingest before your body says, right, that's it. I'm now in a different zone. And gambling has no limit.
We could just keep
as long as you can feed it.
As long as we can find it to steal it, we're gambling it.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And there's no physical sign.
Just it's just your head. It fucks.
No one knows you're a gambler unless
true.
you've made it obvious.
Moody. They just think that you're irritable. They think that you're constantly in your head. You're withdrawn, but they can't tell. Like they can't smell it on you. They can't see it in your eyes. They can't tell it in your movements. It's
only your bank manager notices it pretty quickly. That's true.
I know.
Yeah, man, be a bank teller. You can only imagine.
Yes.
Oh no, thank you.
Well, we thank you so much for coming on here. I'm so happy to get to hear your story and know you a little bit better.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we love seeing the meetings. I love, like you said, there are certain names that you see when you get on and you scroll down.
Yep.
And you've always been a favorite of mine also.
Yes.
Well, yes, and likewise. Just because you run brilliant meetings,
thank you,
which always bring an extra dynamic and an intriguing and interesting and fun dynamic. Who knew recovery could be fun?
Exactly.
It is.
I love it.
Everything in my life, I've always been like, that's how everybody else does it. I want to do it this way. Yeah. And I was in the program and I was hosting meetings and I was like, this is fun, but this could be funner. You know what I mean? And and so the Bag of Boom was created, and
it's like the only game we get to play now.
I hooked up. She's like, oh wait, there's a meeting. We get to play a game.
Yeah, that's why I always make her dig out another one. I'm just hoping she's gonna pull out, a whammy or something.
A stack of 20s.
It hadn't worked yet.
Bag of Boom starts producing 20s with topics on it.
Somebody better look into it.
Yeah, I'm not watching it then. I still haven't watched it.
Well, listen, thank you both for having me.
Oh, thank you, Mark. Thank you so much, man.
We really appreciate it so
and
much.
Thanks for let us hear yourself talk. The end. Boom.
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 Thank you. Good night, man. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
When we edit this, we'll send it to you before we air it.
Yeah, so you can give us
knock anything out. Okay.
Oh yeah, I'm sure I'm perfectly happy with everything I've related.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
I love you, Mark.
Thank you.
I'll talk to you soon.
See ya.
Take care.
What's up, guys? It's Rita Boom here, just telling you, if you enjoyed this podcast, get on there and leave some comments, all right? Whether you liked it, you didn't like it, if it's good enough of a comment, we're going to read it online. Know why? Because it helps our algorithm. That way we don't have to charge anybody anything crazy like that. So, again, leave the comments, we'll read them online, and boom, boom, boom. Don't place a bet today, okay? All right.